Hi, welcome to Cycl'n Vancouver. My name is Steve. I'm an avid cyclist and I normally make videos of my rides, but man cannot live by cycling alone and, sometimes we need a sweet treat after a hard ride. So in that vein, here is my take on the Swiss roll. It's easy to make and very tasty. If you're interested, I've put the recipe in the description below. The first thing I do is start with the fruit filling. Put the berries in a pot on the stove and bring to a boil. While the berries are cooking, I mix the cornstarch with some mango white balsamic vinegar. The acid eliminates any clumping. Cook the berries for about 5 minutes and then add the cornstarch and stir. The mix will thicken very quickly. Cook for about 1 more minute and then remove from heat. Stir in 1/2 teaspoon of cardamom. The spice is very strong and I learned the hard way, go easy with it. Set the mix aside to cool to room temperature and then refrigerate. It needs to be cold. Now it's time to prepare the chocolate ganache. I use various milk chocolate bars for this. My best result was with hazelnut chocolate. If you'd like, you can also add crushed toasted hazelnuts for texture and additional flavor. I just break up the bars and put them in a bowl. Add 1/4 cup of heavy cream. Be careful, don't add too much. This is the perfect amount in my experience. Zap it in the microwave for 1 minute. Carefully remove the bowl from the microwave. It's hot. Now gently work the chocolate in the cream. The point here is to let the hot cream melt the chocolate. Just keep gently stirring until the mix is a nice, shiny, smooth consistency. When it's ready, set it aside on the counter. Do not refrigerate it or cool it below room temperature. Now it's time to make the sponge. Mix the eggs and sugar in a bowl and then whip it up by hand and try to get it a little frothy. Then add in the olive oil and the instant coffee powder and stir. In a separate bowl, I sift the flour, cocoa, and baking soda and then add the salt. Once that's all mixed, I add the egg mixture and gently whisk it all together into a nice batter. Once the batter is ready, I prepare the cooking sheet. I line the sheet with parchment paper and then pour the batter on top and try to carefully work the batter around the sheet. You want to spread it evenly across the sheet. So once the batter is evenly spread on the cookie sheet, just put it in the oven and bake for 12 or 13 minutes. So while that's baking, I then prepare the next piece. I cut a piece of parchment paper for the workspace and sift some cocoa powder on it. This will keep the sponge from sticking to the paper. I also get 3 rubber bands and lay them out next to the workspace. Once the sponge has finished baking, take it out from the oven and, without managing to burn yourself, lift the paper off the cookie sheet and flip it upside down onto the prepared parchment paper. Immediately fold the edge of the paper over the sponge and then roll the sponge into a cylinder. And use the rubber bands to hold the shape while the sponge cools. Now I just set the sponge aside to cool and go watch some sports highlights or YouTube videos. The sponge will take about 30 minutes to properly cool down. The last item to prepare is the whipped cream. Pour a cup of heavy cream into your machine and mix it until you get stiff peaks. Turn off the machine and remove the bowl. Take your room temperature ganache and then pour it into the whipped cream. Using a rubber spatula, gently fold the ganache into the cream. Do not use the machine to mix this. I tried that once. It was a disaster. I like to spoon the mix into a container and refrigerate it until I'm ready to assemble the roll. So if you're ready to put everything together, unroll the sponge and spoon the chilled fruit filling across the entire surface. We'll cut off the ends so the filling doesn't need to ooze out the sides. Leave a little space at the top and bottom of the sponge free of the filling. Spoon the ganache mixture on top of the fruit filling and try to spread it evenly. Using the parchment paper, roll up the sponge. Do not roll it too tightly, otherwise the fruit and ganache will ooze out the sides. Use the rubber bands to hold the completed roll together. Place the roll in the refrigerator. It generally takes about 4 hours to properly set. I usually make my Swiss rolls in the evening and let them set overnight. They're perfect in time for breakfast. So once the Swiss roll has set, I normally unwrap it and cut it into 1-inch slices. I find this is the perfect serving size and it stores nicely in a container in the fridge.